It's a pleasure to welcome you to this conversation where we have a unique opportunity to explore the intersection of academia and industry, two spaces that must work in close alignment to prepare the current and future workforce and address the evolving challenges organizations face. As educators, we are responsible for developing talent, advancing knowledge, and equipping learners with the skills needed to succeed. As industry leaders, the focus is on applying those skills in dynamic, real-world environments to drive performance, innovation, and impact. When these two perspectives come together, we create a powerful bridge between theory and practice. Today's discussion reflects that alignment. It is about ensuring that we teach in our classrooms remains relevant, forward-looking, and responsive to the needs of organizations, while also allowing industry to inform and shape the competencies required for long-term success. It is our privilege to introduce our distinguished leader, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., President and CEO of SHRM. Johnny, good to see you.
Good to see you.
He's leader of the world's largest trade association of HR professionals, representing nearly 340,000 members in 180 countries. He's widely recognized as a leading voice in human capital strategy, workplace policy, and the future of work. Johnny has served in senior executive roles across multiple sectors and is trusted advisor to business leaders and policymakers on issues ranging from workforce development to leadership and organizational effectiveness. Johnny brings a rare combination of deep practical experience and strategic insight, making him an ideal partner in this conversation about how academia and industry can collaborate more intentionally and effectively. Johnny, good to see you, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I'm under a ton of pressure after that introduction, right? So I got to actually deliver now. So good to see you.
Good to see you
Very
too.
good to see
Again,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Johnny, you spend a lot of time listening to and advising leaders. What are some of the most common misconceptions you're hearing about in workplace culture right now?
So it's really interesting. First of all, the definition of culture seems to, you ask one person, there are about 10, 12, 15 different versions of culture altogether. But the biggest misperception as of late is what we call Culture 101. Back in the day, when if you had free popcorn and massages and those sorts of things, those were indicators of a good culture. That if you had the trappings, and Silicon Valley was known for that, right? All of that. And that was what was deemed, if you did those things, hockey machines, basketball hoops in the office, you were deemed to have a good culture. And what we've learned from a misconception standpoint is all of those trappings don't necessarily equate to good culture. They're nice to have, but you can have an organization that continues to still fail on the culture side, notwithstanding all of those investments and free food, free this, free that. That's number one. The second big issue that we find is culture is this interesting thing that your culture, and I say this all the time, I don't believe in good or bad cultures within an organization, save for illegal, immoral, unethical. Get that off the table. But other than that, an organization's culture is its culture. It's a unique culture, and every one of us have one. And where we failed in the past from a misconception standpoint is I want to be like Apple, I want to be like Microsoft, and that was a failure on our part, is we thought there was a such thing as a perfect culture, and there wasn't. The perfect culture is one where you achieve what I call cultural clarity. That is, as leaders, you sit down and you literally articulate your culture and the behaviors that one can see in your culture. And then you recruit for that, you promote for that, you do everything along. That's how you create culture. But it's not your employee brand or employer brand. That does not, just because you have a great employer brand, does not mean necessarily that you have a great culture.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, you often talk about being intentional when it comes to workplace culture.
Yes.
What does intentional culture design look like in practice, and where should leaders start? What advice would you provide to our leaders?
So I'm going to give you a little anecdote.
Absolutely.
So I was the head of HR for a company called IAC, Interactive Court. And none of you may know the name, but it was the parent company to Ticketmaster, Home Shopping Network, Match.com, et cetera. So it was a big, big company based in New York City. And I was the CHRO there. And so we sat down, my CEO, I convinced him grudgingly to work on culture. So him, the CFO, the general counsel, myself, the chief marketing officer, we all sat in the room and decided we were going to put together a cultural statement. And it was very interesting. And you argue over words and commas and semicolons and everything, that exercise. But when it's all said and done, I said, can we test this with our employees? Just a small group of them, just to see, because something in me said, I'm just not convinced that this is what we say our culture is, and what they experience is probably different. Well, so pulled together a group of about 5 employees, and we blindly tested our cultural statement. And it was so funny. One of the women, she looked at it and she said, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. And I went back to the management team and I said, we missed the button. We missed it here. And what I realized is we articulated our aspirational culture, what we wanted to be, how we wanted to see ourselves, what our employer brand would be. We did not do this the right way, and that is start with the employees. They will tell you what the culture is, as opposed to top down. The idea is go and ask, what is this culture in this organization? How do people, what's their lived experience? How do they, and you're going to get your culture then. Now you may decide after doing this, so you ask me tactically, what do? You go to employees and say, what's the culture? Describe it, give me the words, give me the behaviors. Taking all of that information, that's how you come up with a culture statement, because that is. Now you may say, this is where we are, this is where we aspire to be, our aspirational culture, but too often if you start at the top, you get the aspirational culture, because of course, if you're in the C-suite, generally speaking, life is good. You may have good or bad days, but by and large, you are at least in control of your own destiny, and therefore the culture is good for you almost by definition. Sure. So the big mistake, and I think the opportunity for anyone listening, is that you start the other way. I think you've got to start with your employees. Describe what it means to work here.
And you always talk about how that culture makes you win as
That's
an organization.
Right. Oh, period. And if you don't get that right, it's really hard to win. Unless, now listen, if you're creating some highly unusual product that no one has, then people just have to deal with you no matter what, maybe so. But even that's a short-term win. But I agree with you.
Thank you, Johnny. From your vantage point, how strong is the connection between culture and business performance, to add to that conversation? And do leaders fully appreciate it? What advice would you present there?
I think for a long time, culture was a soft word. It was poo-poo. It was like, when you talk to CEOs about culture, they'd roll their eyes. Come on. And frankly, so too, I was like, oh, here we go again. What do you want? Popcorn machines or whatever. And I didn't fully appreciate the significance of getting your culture right, because, and I use this sort of metaphor, if everyone's on a road team and you have 10 people going this way, just one person going the opposite way, it screws everything up. It really does. And that person actually may be going the opposite way because you've not taken the time to describe the culture accurately to him or her. And it affects productivity, it affects morale and therefore employee engagement, it affects retention. People don't stay in organizations where the culture doesn't feel right. And every CEO I know now, and it's hard for me to say every, but every CEO I know now is talking about culture. Like who do we want to recruit into our organization? And in the process of recruiting them, they're going to ask us, what's the culture here? What is the culture? And if you can't articulate it, and they're going to check with other people who work there, you say one thing, they say something else, the most talented people have options, and they simply won't come to you. Here's the worst case scenario. You get them, they come in, and the culture is not what you said it was, so they feel like bait and switch, and then they're out.
Yep.
So it's so important to the success of a business. We're past the days of culture being a nice to have thing. It's like a base ingredient to creating a great company.
Thank you, Johnny. So you've likely seen many organizations with beautifully written values, so the espouse and
Yes.
and then what's enacted, right? Why do those so often fail to show up in real employee experience? And you started to alluding the
Yeah, because they were created, they sounded good. You know, they were, as someone said, deep as a puddle. This notion that they didn't come from the organization. They came from someone trying to describe potentially what they believed would be the perfect culture, the perfect organization. And that's why they fail. I mean, the disconnect, I've seen companies, and I do some executive coaching, if you will,
Sure.
to CEOs. And I had a conversation just recently with the CEO, and I said, you know, who you think you are and how you're perceived is very different than how your employees perceive you and who they think you are and who they think this entire organization is. And I'm not talking about one or two people, because there's always going to be naysayers in any organization. You're going to have someone who's not necessarily on board. But I said, you have a cultural misconnect. Like, there is something way off here, because you think this is what the company is and how it operates. And overwhelmingly, your people feel something different. That is because I think he had, I know in this instance, he has in his head the idea. Like, it's a really interesting experience to talk to someone who says, no, it's great here. And I'm like, no, but look at your turnover. That's an indication. Look at your engagement scores. That's an indication. There are signs that whatever you think is perfect isn't.
Again, what's real and what's perceived. Right?
Right.
Was there a pivotal moment in your career that changed how you approach leadership?
Yeah, and I've shared this story, and it's one I'm a little embarrassed about.
All right, let's hear it.
But I'll tell you about it. So but it also defined me and helped me become a more empathetic leader. So early in my career, I was at a law firm. And, you know, big law, you're working a ton of hours, and we had secretaries who supported us all at that time. There were still fax machines and typewriters and all of that stuff, right? So I had a brief due. I was working on a brief for a client, and it was due, the courts close at 5 o'clock. You have to file it by 5 o'clock. So call at 4:45, my then secretary came in to me and said, I just got a call from my kid's school, and I have to go now. And I looked at her, and I squarely looked at her in her eye, and I said, your kid's not my problem. I cannot believe now that I said that. Your kid is not my problem. I need this document filed by 5 o'clock. So I put this woman in this almost untenable position of keeping her job or taking care of her family. And it is the tension. Like, I needed to get it done. My client deserved, and oftentimes in court filings, if you miss the deadline, you miss the deadline. So it was serious. But on the other hand, I have this single mother here who's gotten a kid, you know, and I actually didn't even inquire what happened or what was wrong. For all I knew, the kid had been severely injured in an accident or something. I didn't care. I really did not care. And I reflect on it now because she burst into tears. And that was the moment when that hit me, that I have put her in an incredibly untenable position, and there's got to be another and better way to lead people. I remember that forever because it was that day that I decided, I mean, business results matter. Doing the work that you are supposed to do for your client or build the product that you're supposed to sell to your product, that matters. But there are people and human beings on the other side of that, and you've got to reconcile them, that humans aren't machines, and life happens. So that was a big moment for me.
And you're saying, in other words, that empathetic leadership will help to retain and possibly impact productivity and engagement
and
all of
loyalty
that.
and everything. I mean, so the funny part about this story is she didn't go. So she stayed because she needed the job, and I got my brief filed, and I was fine. But I got to tell you, she never saw me the same after that. Before that, I had a very loyal, you know, sort of relationship, and after that, it was transactional. And she did what she did, and I mean, at 5 o'clock, she left. It was like, you get nothing extra out of me. And one day we talked about it, you know, after I left the firm, by the way, and she shared with me how that really, really, really was unfair. And it was not, she said, I didn't really need your sympathy. This is where I got the distinction between, I didn't need your sympathy. I'll take care of my kid. I needed your empathy. There had to be, I needed you to feel the tension, the situation that I was in, and you totally dismissed it. Again, I never even asked, well, what's wrong with the kid? I didn't care. I had 15 minutes or so to file this document, and that's what was going to happen.
Thank you for sharing that, Johnny. That's a powerful
And by the way, I'm not proud of it, but it happened.
Yeah. Given that, how do you stay grounded and consistent as a leader in times of rapid change?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Change. A good friend of mine, Bob Goodwin, says, today is the slowest day of the remainder of your life. This idea that things they happen so fast. It's hard. Can I tell you how hard it is? Every day, something new is coming at you. And I mean from the outside, so competitive threats. Inside, your employees aren't happy. It's hard to make hundreds of thousands of people happy on any given day. Your customers and members are not happy. Like every day, these jobs are exhausting. I go home and I was reading something that says the average CEO makes like 30 or 40 major decisions a day. I don't know what the number is, and I may be off in the stat, but the idea is you have to make a lot of decisions, and they're coming at you, and what was true yesterday is not true today. As you know,
Yep.
I mean, look at AI. I remind folks that November 30th of 2022 was the introduction of ChatGPT. None of us, except the geeky coded technology people, they knew about it, but none of us knew anything about that thing. That was just 3 years ago. And now, look, it's taken over
It's
our
a way of
lives.
life.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's taken jobs, and you got a displacement issue. It's literally put some companies out of business because what they did now it's not required. Like it is, so think about being a leader as you and I are in these situations, and all of that happened in 3 years. Now in the past, a new technology would be introduced, and it might take 10 years to get. This happened in 3 years. They're in Chat 5 now, the 5th version of it, I think, now. And then there's Gemini, and there's Claude, and there's like, and it just came out of nowhere. I mean, who ever thought about a data center until 3 years ago? Right? And so that's the hardest part of the job is just when you think you figured it out, it changes. And you have to respond to it. Now, let me share with you something else that from a leadership standpoint is really difficult. Employees want stability. Employees want to know the direction of the company. And unfortunately, the direction of the company can change from not day to day, but we start out with this 3-year plan and 6 months into it, we change. And I'll tell you, I've personally been in situations where people are like, well, what's going on here? Does senior management even know what it's doing? Because one day you told us this, the next day you told us this. We started the year going down this path, now you changed and you pivoted. That's a necessity now. Back in the day, I used to read a book about Apple or one of the companies saying they operate in chaos. Like their environment is chaotic by definition, their culture. And I thought, who would want to do that? And now all of us are doing it. All of us live in chaos.
Necessity.
Right.
To survive.
Yes.
And excel
Yes.
in that environment.
That's right.
So, given that you mentioned AI, technological advances are transforming jobs and changing where work is getting done.
Yes.
How do you see technology, especially AI, changing the role of HR in the next few years? And I think many of us are dealing with this in education, and then, of course, all of our HR professionals. What's your take on that?
Oh gosh, it's not a couple of years, it's now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be even more profound over the next couple of years. So a couple of things are happening to the profession, but before I get to the profession, I have to talk about people. So I'm one of those folks who believe that you have to be very honest with society, and you just have to. AI is going to result in displacement. There will be some jobs that will go away, and people in those jobs who may not be able to find another job, particularly at the level. So think about West Virginia back in the day, coal miners. And we had this theory that you can make coal miners coders. Well, that didn't work so much. It didn't. Yes, there were other jobs on the other, but these people could not. They just didn't have the requisite skills to be trained to do this new job. So when their jobs went away, there you have it. We're facing a very similar sort of moment right now, except it's widespread. It's not one state. It's not the steel manufacturing states. It's not the coal states. It's like this is widespread. The data tells us that automation in the past used to affect blue collar jobs. AI and automation and all of that is now affecting white collar jobs, and that's scary. And so it's starting with we as HR leaders in particular. So to answer your question about how AI is going to transform HR, one, there's some real benefits to it because there's tedious work that none of us ever wanted to do anyway. I have a brother who's in talent acquisition, and can you imagine posting a job and getting 50 resumes or 500 resumes? Who wants to sit down and review all of those resumes?
Sure.
It's not only is it not comfortable to do, it's also not you're not likely to find the best candidate.
It's inefficient.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the use of technology to help not make the decision, but to clear through the clutter, to find, get this down from 500 resumes to 5 or 10 or 15, pick a number. That's where AI can be very, very helpful to us. So I see a lot of, and none of us wanted to sit around on the weekend and review all those damn resumes, to be totally honest. So those are things that AI, sitting down with an employee, for example, and putting together, I'm HR, the learning and development, the employee comes in and says, I'm here and I want to be here. In the past, we'd have to go do the research with the employee, put together a development plan for them. Now, using AI, we can actually very quickly and efficiently, to your point, develop a plan for someone specifically. Like, you want to go from here to here, this is exactly how you do it using AI. Now, AI will put together a plan. You still need the human being to do sort of quality assurance and make sure, but it's a tool that will make, I believe, HR far more not only just efficient, but effective. We will be able to provide really, really good advice and counsel to our leaders and to our employees by using this technology. Now, do we have to do it responsibly? Yes. Ethically? Yes. I've heard the complaints about AI and bias in its screening. Well, let me just say to anyone who's listening, if you think an algorithm is biased, think about a human being. Human beings are the worst at it. We all have our biases, right? The algorithm it doesn't see a pregnant woman. I do when she comes in to interview with me, and I scan that right away. It doesn't have a bias for Harvard or it's just it's a really, really different. It's a tool that can help us. So we've got to embrace it as the HR profession. It's different. It's fundamentally restructuring how we do what we do. One other thing related to that, and I've been on a real trail about this right now, this idea that in the future, the question will not be how many people do we need to do a job. So we have a problem, how many people do we need? And that was sort of what we did in the past, labor planning. We're going to open this new business, roll out this new product, how many people do you need? Now the question will be, how will the work be done? That's the question. It may involve people. It may involve machines. It may involve both. It may involve outsourced, offshore. There's just so many different ways that HR now will have to look at work. How work gets done is the future of HR, not just, which is why I don't want to upset anybody by saying this, but that's why I'm not fond of the title Chief People Officer. Because work may be done by people or it may not in the future. We now know robots and co-pilots and all those things. So we have to evolve into a profession that recognizes that work will be done by people, machines, combination, et cetera, in the future.
And that is powerful set of insights that you're offering there to our HR community. How then does SHRM continuously study the state of HR education to update content areas and revise curriculum guidelines that reflect the HR challenges and technologies of the moment? Example, State of HR Education Study.
Yes. So that's the answer, is every year we dig deep. People don't know we have PhDs, IO psychologists, statisticians, labor economists on staff here. Very, very smart people. And their job, I describe SHRM and our research team as meteorologists.
I've heard you describe that
describe.
before.
Our job is to tell you what's coming. It's actually not what the current state of HR is. It's to say, sure, we'll tell you, we'll issue a report, but it's the value in what we do is to say, based upon all of the sense making that we are engaged in, this is coming. AI is coming. Legislative changes and policy changes are coming. And then our job is to ensure that you all in education, right, we give you a heads up so that you can prepare the incoming HR professionals. As you're educating them, giving the tools that they need to be successful, that's our job. So it's as much important for the HR profession to know what's coming down the pike as it is for educators, universities and colleges. And you all are supposed to know what's happening, and we have a role in telling you that. This is how the profession is changing, and therefore this should inform, not decide, but inform what your curriculum should look like.
And that's where we have to pivot to ensure that we're adapting to all of those needs and ensure.
Because I got to tell you, I was talking to a group of professors recently, and there's this debate over whether or not you're supposed to be there to help your students get good jobs. And I said, well, of course you are. 95, 97% of people who go to college go to college for a good job. So if you're not preparing them for a good job, then it's not a fair deal, because that's why they're there. Now, you may have other reasons to think they should be there, but why they are there is to get a good job. And part of that is you all have to prepare the next generation, in this case of HR students, for the work that is. And it's not the work that was even 5 years ago. Listen, COVID changed everything for the HR practice. So even before AI, COVID was 2020, and then the introduction of chat as we know it was 2022. But in 20, everything. Think about this. Overnight, we decided we're all going to work remotely. Not all, but desk workers were going to work remotely. Historically, if I had decided, my CEO came to me as the CHRO and say, we're going to change the way we work, and we're going to do it over the weekend, we would all tell them, can't happen, can't do it, you need to have consultants come in, you need change management, all that stuff. All of it. We didn't have that. We didn't have the luxury of it. We immediately decided, in the name of health, that people would be able to work remotely. So we proved very quickly that it could happen. Is it suboptimal? Perhaps and likely, but whatever. We proved it on a dime. It began changing the HR profession. Mental health became really important because now our employees are isolated. So the profession changed literally in 2020 on a dime. And I would submit to you it changed again in 2022 with less 22 when the ChatGPT was introduced, but right now is another COVID moment. It really is. I use this language that says there are two things that represent an existential threat to human beings. One is a threat to their lives. That was COVID. The other is the threat to their livelihoods. That's AI. People right now are absolutely afraid of the anxiety. If you read one more article that says, half the jobs are going to go away in the next 10 years. What do you think that says to people, that your work is going away? And by the way, that directly influences HR, because if there are fewer people, there's going to be fewer HR people, right? It's just what it is. And so this is a scary moment for our employees right now. And they want to retrain for the next job, so we have to tell them what those jobs are. This is a really interesting time for HR.
Plus it impacts their psychological contract, that whole engagement issue.
That's right. What did you see? Block, Jack Dorsey, the owner of Block, 10,000 employees. He laid off 4,000 employees one day and said because of AI. 4,000, 40% of your employees you laid off in one day. And the company was doing fine. It wasn't you doing this because you're losing money. Great quarter, the company's doing fine. It was just, I don't need these people anymore, 4,000 of them. This happened about a week or two ago. So the wake effect of that throughout the universe of employees was very significant.
Thanks, Johnny. So we got some additional questions from our students and faculty and some of our local HR professionals. So I have to ask you on their behalf, what leadership advice do you call upon frequently yourself? And what would you advise to, for example, our students from that perspective?
Right, so leadership. I gave you the answer, I'm going to do it again because it's that important. Empathy. Okay. Empathy is everything in leadership, and I've learned that from that earliest days as a lawyer, because all of us, you come out, your students are going to come out and they're, 3-point plus a student, and they know they're smart, they got a college degree, and they come in and they want to go up the corporate ladder and all of that good stuff. And we just have to, as a leader, you want people to be empathetic toward you, but you also have to be empathetic toward others. So empathy is this really interesting thing. Dr. Alex Alonso, our chief knowledge officer, coined this term, mepathy. He said people don't actually want empathy. They want mepathy, which is empathy toward themselves
Yes,
only.
yes,
They don't care anything about anybody else, right? And it is kind of true, right? You want people to be empathetic toward you. What I would say from a leadership standpoint is that's not the way to lead, and it's not the best way to get the most out of people. You genuinely have to care for your people. I'm reading a lot of books on servant leadership,
Sure.
and that is important. It really is. This is your flock. These are the people who are entrusting their livelihoods to you as a leader, and you have an obligation to do it with empathy. That would be one. The other thing, though, that I would say to recent college graduates in particular, and professors who are preparing them, is you've got to be really, really good at something. You've got to master something. Yesterday I did a talk on the mastery of I can't forget the title, but it was around mastery. In an increasingly competitive, uber competitive space, you can't come in and just say, I want to be in HR. I like people. Like, that doesn't cut it. You've got to be able to tell me, what can you do? What tools, current technologies, can you use, and that you are well trained on to come in from day one and help me in learning and development, in employee relations, in this and that. Like, you have to show me early on that you add value coming into the organization. That's what leaders are looking for. Even as an individual first-time employee, make the case to me that you can add value to this organization, and we're good.
And not everybody has to be good at everything.
No.
Where that employee or potential candidate has some specialized expertise.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it's that thing, become great at something. You
Sure.
should become a subject matter expert at something. Just quick anecdote.
Yeah.
I remember early in my life, I was at a law firm. I got an opportunity to go in-house as the third lawyer at Blockbuster. So, by the way, there was a company called Blockbuster at one time.
I remember that.
So I was a third lawyer, and they brought me in to run the contracts division and the labor and employment division. And we had a ton of employees because, as you know, we had stored 9,000 of them all over the place. And so in between me accepting the job and showing up for the first day, I read every labor treatise, every employment. I educate when I should have been taking a break, the vacation in between. When I walked in that door, I said, no matter what meeting I go into, I am going to be the labor and employment expert. I will be the smartest person in this room on this topic. And it served me well, because everything's a people issue. Invariably, it always comes. And I very quickly rose through corporate America because I was a subject matter expert. I studied my craft. And that's what I would say to students. If you want to become a leader, if you want to be seen for the track, you've got to be damn good at something. And it's not okay to just say, well, I'm a kid, I'm a recent college graduate. No. You can now, because of the education that you're getting and AI and all these tools, you can become very, very good at something, and you must. Generally, being smart doesn't cut it anymore.
Thanks, Johnny. You talk about this ever so often. What are some key competencies you expect to see being targeted in the university curriculum?
So there are the durable skills,
Right.
which I want you all to work on big time. And those are like showing up to work on time, collaborating and being able to work in teams. The basics, like dressing appropriately, like addressing people appropriately. Like some data that talks about, foul language during interviews and just totally inappropriate stuff. So I call those they used to be called life skills, durable skills, whatever you want to call them. We actually need you all to get back to those basics, because the fact that you all as academia, class starts at 2:00 and you let people roll in at 2:15. They come here believing that, and that's not the way it works. It's just not. So we need you to actually get those durable skills nailed while they're in school. You're not doing it, and I get it, they're in school, but then they're almost not in school. They're almost going into the workforce. That's number one. On the other side, from pure competency, critical thinking, there's nothing that replaces, because those are the people who solve problems. You've got to be able to see it. So to the extent you can add rigor in whatever courses you have to force people to think critically. Secondly, writing. Writing, oh gosh, the number of people who can't write. And I'm not talking about writing some treatise. I'm talking about just basic writing.
And not using ChatGPT or
Right.
depending on it.
Right. That you can actually write. Your manager comes to you and says, send a note to the employees here that says X, and after our meeting, and you can't write that 3-paragraph, 4-paragraph note. That is tragic. It's fraught with spelling errors and grammatical and syntax, and it's just all wrong. That's increasingly a problem. People cannot write. They can speak, but they don't write well. And that's a big part of it, because I get most of my information being a CEO in writing, right? And I judge someone, the person who sent it to me, based upon what they send me. And if you send me a memo and I'm like, what is this? Was this person graduated college? I automatically make assumptions about you. So preparing students to write, critical thinking, and then one of the ones, this is work ethic. You just, nothing. I used to say, listen, I'm smart enough, but there are always smarter people. But no one will outwork me. No one will. And that is a key differentiator for folks. So a combination of all of that, but writing and critical thinking is at the top of the list. Those are the two. But I just had to get on this notion of work ethic, and I'm going to say something that gets controversial every time I say it. This surprised me. Work-life balance. I don't think that exists. Here at SHRM, we talk about work-life integration. So I try to make it work. You got to go to your kid's baseball game, go, But you might also be up at 9 o'clock that night preparing for the memo after you put your kids down and you do. So it's not a 9-to-5 job. You integrate your life into your work. This idea that, you're going to spend 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours working, 8 hours, no, it's not real. And increasingly, and I've heard President Obama, I've heard everyone talk about, if you plan to have a successful career in corporate or frankly anywhere, the idea that your life is going to be in balance at all times is just naive. It's not accurate.
Well, remember that, critical thinking, writing, work-life integration, and work ethic.
Yeah, work ethic.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Couple more questions.
Yes.
What advice can you provide to HR professionals to measure the impact on the business? And you talked about value earlier. How do we really measure all that we're making happen? Of course, we're doing, but then how do we measure what we're making happen?
So, this is a topic I was just talking about yesterday.
Okay.
Because most business leaders determine if a company is successful or not based upon our dashboards, to your point, right? And so almost every professional on my executive team can prove how they're doing. I'm the marketing person, I'm successful because this many people came into my marketing funnel and da-da-da-da-da. One of the challenges for HR, and it's been a problem for a while, frankly, from my earliest days in HR, is we haven't quite landed on those things that matter to business. So what do I mean? Just because you capture the data doesn't mean it matters to anyone or that it is valuable. An example, I had, when I was the head of HR at Blockbuster, vice president of HR, I had a manager come in, an HR person, and say, we've put our people through, pick the number, I don't remember the number, but 3,000 hours of training and development. And I said, and so how did that benefit me? And she was stunned. She measured activity, not impact. And so I was like, that's interesting, but maybe those are 3,000 wasted hours, right? Who knows? And I offended her, I'm sure, but I was like, you're measuring activity. And while that might be interesting for you to check your box, it doesn't tell me value. Now, if you can show me that by doing that, this number of people were promoted, this number of people, our productivity per employee increased. Like, if you can show revenue per employee, we have to be able to measure its impact on business and not just the measurement of activity. So some of the things that I look at are revenue per person. It is absolutely a fair, Wall Street does it, and they look at it, look at your employee headcount, and are you making more money every year on your employee base? That's one. Retention, believe it or not, matters because there are costs associated with replacing people. So that's a good thing to measure, right? Finding those things in short, because I go on and on, but finding those things in short that the leader you can quantify, you can put dollars and cents to, because that's when people start paying attention, even in the employee relations side. Something soft, and I'm going to use the terms, I'm going to use air quotes around soft, but employee engagement. We actually know, so this happened recently. HR guy goes to a CEO and says, our employee engagement scores are 4.9 out of 5. The CEO says so. What does that mean?
Right.
That's the problem. We too often focus, like, tell me why that matters to me. And without something more, it's just HR speak. Okay, so you took an engagement score, da-da-da. If you can show me how that absolutely impacts this business, then we can have a conversation.
And you can use it, to your point, predict what turnover will be, or just productivity in general.
That's right, and that's the biggie. So you just nailed it. I was going to talk about that, but thank you for the prodding on it. What we as leaders want, the Holy Grail, would be to predict when someone's going to leave. If you could use data to say, based upon these results, I think we're going to lose 10% of our engineers. And I'm in a company that relies on my engineers. A couple of things. One, I know they're going, which means you can now start looking for the backfill. And two, maybe we can stop them from going. If you want me, Mr. CEO, in this sense, just to go sit down and talk with the engineers and shore up their sense of esprit de corps and love of the company, let me do it. That's HR at its best, is when you can come in and, again, add value. That's everything as an HR person. If you're listening now as a student, add value.
Thank you, Johnny. How do you see HR evolving in the years ahead? So you talk about not looking in the mirror, but looking out the window.
Right.
To use that term. So how do you see HR evolving in the future?
So it's, I've been thinking about this and am starting to write about it. I think we've evolved from personnel, right,
Sure.
to HR, and then there were CHROs and there were CPOs, Chief People Officers, and all these other titles. I think we will evolve, whether the title is this or not, ultimately to Chief Work Officers.
Okay.
Interesting concept. That is, this is going to be the only thing that will save us, by the way, is if you and your department is the group where everyone comes, marketing, finance, operators, sort of, and they say, I need this work to get done. Help me architect that. Some of it will be people, some of it will be this. But when we become that function, that just helps organizations get work done. So tell me what your work is. Tell me what has to be done. And I say, okay, we can have 2 people do that. We can outsource this much. We can do this. That's when you are like really, really a go-to function. I think that's where we are evolving. The people in our profession who are focused exclusively on our employees, which, by the way, are the most important asset. I'm not poo-pooing employees. I'm just saying increasing. There's big questions around, do you need all of these employees? That's why they're shedding them, right? Some are obviously shedding them and some are subtly shedding them. I read an article yesterday, and it was either the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but about a guy who has a $2 billion company and only 2 employees. $2 billion in revenue and only 2 employees. Well, of course, you don't have $2 billion in revenue and only 2 employees. You may only have 2 employees, but you got a whole bunch of people who are doing this work. You've set up, but they're not your employees. And in the future, I think we may see more and more and more of these sort of distributed organizations. And we're going to have to evolve to that. It's scary, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
It's the way we think about it. But if you get a chance, check that article out. It's fast. 2 billion, 2 people, and $2 billion of revenue. And the Wall Street Journal, I think, which is where I think I read it, they went in and audited the books because it was like so unbelievable. But they did. Like, they're doing it now. So it's a very different model. I'm sure their accounting is outsourced to someone.
Sure.
This is account. But Yeah, so the people are there, but they're not yours. Is that wild?
That is, like you said, it's a game of the future, right?
That's
So we
right.
have to be able to prepare for that from a mental mindset and
That's
everything. So everyone, there you have heard from Johnny Taylor himself about where we're at as an HR function and where we're heading, some of the competencies we need, and what leadership in HR is all about, and leadership in general, what it's all about. Johnny, thank you,
Thank you,
so
my
much,
man.
and
Thank you very much,
continued success
I appreciate
in all
it.
that
Thank you
do.
so much for bringing
Yeah.
me. Absolutely.